Hello and welcome to this movie night review of the 2013 film that is The Purge. The first edition is the one that we're looking at today. So I'll get straight into it and just look at a brief summary. So it's set in 2022 USA, and in this vision of the USA they've introduced something called The Purge, which is one night of every year in which everything, including murder, is legal. No emergency services are set in the 12-hour period from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. of this night. Anything goes. And so the film is following the story of the Sandon family, a very wealthy family in a very wealthy neighbourhood, and the father of which, James, is someone that sells security systems and has made a hell of a lot of money off it. For people so that they can survive the night. So what happens is, obviously they're locked down with all their protection up, and then Dwayne Bishop, a homeless man who's being chased by some young, enthusiastic purgers, he needs somewhere to go. And so one of the children, Charlie Sandon, they let the man in, they unarm and then rearm, so he has somewhere to hide. But these purgers find out about where he's hiding, and so they're trying to get in, and it carries on like this. And eventually they do get in. So I will look at some of the plot holes first, and so I've got two to look at, and one of them isn't that significant. One of them for me really is because it just plainly doesn't make any sense. So firstly, I would just like to point out, obviously people are spending tens of thousands of dollars on their security systems, and it's something that everyone's talking about, and it's something that doesn't even leave them completely protected. It's something that still leaves them at some risk, as we see in the film itself. But if they were going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on their own security, why wouldn't they just spend maybe $2,000 on some return overnight flights to Canada, for example, where the purge doesn't exist because it's just an American thing in the film's vision. That's just a pretty big thing to point out. But the much bigger issue for me is of how they leave the homeless man, Dwayne Bishop, tied up when they decide to fight the purgers. So the dilemma that James Sandon and, to an extent, his family is left with is whether they release this man who they know would be executed by the purgers, or if they stay and fight and risk all of their lives, but they may save him. The thing is, he doesn't really choose either of these options, because what he essentially does is, we see that he does leave Dwayne Bishop tied up, and he knows that they're going to break in, and so to all intents and purposes, James Sandon realises, or at least what he thinks he's doing, is he's just leaving the man to be killed and executed by the purgers. Well, if he was going to allow them, if his moral position is that he should be killed, why wouldn't he just release them himself? And, save for certain all of his family? It really just doesn't make sense at this point, and it is a pretty big plot hole in the film. So, to go on to some other points, I think that the acting overall in this film is really good, and there's just sort of one issue I have with it, and that's it's sort of at the start and the end. I think they really overplayed almost like the bitchiness that there is between the neighbours and the Sandons, in that, it makes sense that people would maybe be saying a few things behind their back, because obviously everyone has paid a lot of money to this family, and, there's moral questions I won't go completely into, but, there is a reasonable point that there would be grievances, but I think it's completely overplayed in the acting at the start when, obviously, the mother, who's Mary, is given some cookies, and she's, the neighbour is just really overplaying how angry they are. Like, you just wouldn't say that to someone's face, or at least you shouldn't, or at least from the perspective of the film, it shouldn't be made that obvious how it's going to end, because obviously, it's a night of death where you basically just kill people that you don't like. I don't feel that it shouldn't be made that obvious to the viewers. It shouldn't be that shoved in their face that, the neighbours are going to get involved, which obviously they do. And yeah, for me that's just a bit overly foreshadowed, and even at the end, I think that this whole sort of passionate sort of dislike, if that's a polite way of putting it, that they have with each other, it's just a bit overdone, I think. I think they could maybe be a bit more subtle and show it rather than completely tell it to the viewer. But I'll look beyond that, and so to sort of summarise the film and the good points, I think that it is an entertaining film overall. It's pretty entertaining. It's based around jump scare as sort of its selling point, which it really does have quite a lot of, and it does that really successfully. It is quite a funny film to watch, really, in a group, just, people being made jumps, which, people being made to jump, which, is what this kind of film is aiming at. So they do ultimately fulfill their purpose really well. But I think that maybe one thing that, just another issue just to point out on this topic is, it's not really sort of super scary film, and I think maybe they brought in the masks to sort of provide that sort of, I guess, like when you watch a horror film and you're sort of thinking about it a few days after, and that kind of effect. It doesn't really do that successfully at all. I don't really think they have any sort of, I guess, like, ongoing effect. It's just a film to watch if you just find it quite funny and it's jump scare. And it should point out, I believe it's only actually 15, the film, so it's not, maybe a severe. So actually, it does probably fulfill its purpose quite well. So to summarise with this film, I think that it has its issues, but all in all, there's some issues, as I mentioned, with the overplaying and a couple of plot holes, but ultimately it does fulfill its purpose of just being quite a fun jump scare film to watch. So I guess on that basis I would give it 3.5 stars out of 5. So that's my review of The Purge. Thanks for listening, and also, if you do want to see a review of the second Purge film, if this video gets over 3 likes, I will provide that for you. Thank you.